podcast of Beyond Betrayal, our forgiveness initiative. And what we're doing with these broadcasts is that we're walking you through the steps to understand and practice forgiving those who have offended you. And that doesn't mean reconciling necessarily, but what it does mean is finding freedom for yourself. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about step number 3, and that's how to forgive. Step number 3 is what we're looking at, and we're looking at essentially grieving our losses. And there's a crucial link between grief and forgiveness. And so in this session, I'm going to be talking to a couple friends here, and we're going to explore that relationship further. So we'll be right back. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
What's happening?
Not too much.
It's amazing that we were able to pull all of this together today.
Yes.
Trina's running in one direction, and Karen is in another, and I was running behind myself, and so, but we were eventually able to make this happen. So that's good.
Yes. Very good.
So I'm glad that you guys are able to be with us today. So we're going to be talking about, well, let's just jump over here and look at the slides. We're going to be talking about offenses and losses, or hurts and losses, and understanding the relationship between grief and forgiveness. Now, I'm going to unpack all of that in just a moment. But it's really important to understand. And I wish, a lot of this stuff for me has been an unfolding journey in my own life where I owe a debt of gratitude to many, many people who have kind of spoke into my life, whether they be, my direct relationship with them or through their training ministries and their teaching ministries. And so, but I remember the time when I finally kind of like the coin fell into the slot and what we're going to be talking about today. But first of all, let's take a look at what Jesus says about this, because despite the fact that he's oftentimes discounted in our culture today, is that I'm convinced that he has, he is the way, the truth, and the life, and he knows how to help us on our spiritual journeys. So he says in Matthew 5:4, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. So instead of mourning, what do people do with their hurts?
Well, they can be angry and act out.
Yeah. Act out in what ways?
Well, you can act out against someone else, or you can yourself act out and do stupid things to fill an empty hole.
Yeah, really. So that what Jesus is really talking about here is he's and let's look at that verse one more time there. He is talking about the path to comfort. Mm-hmm. And so, what, by the way, if you look at that verse again, when he says God blesses those who mourn, what is a precondition? So what has to happen first before we start mourning? Well, obviously.
A hurt of some kind.
A hurt. And and Jesus is giving us an algorithm here on how to resolve our hurts. And, a lot of people kind of discount this because they think that everything that Jesus teaches is salvation related.
Right.
But Jesus not only teaches important truths about salvation, but he also teaches important truths about being a spiritual person.
Right.
You know,
That's right.
and the only way, and by the way, we will, during the course of our lives, we will be hurt in profound ways, not just once, but time after again. And so it's best to learn how to manage our hurts well, because otherwise we're not going to be comforted.
That's right.
You know. Now we may be drunk, or we might be high, or we might just go around being a crank all the time,
or lonely.
Yeah, or lonely.
Right.
You know,
Right.
anger. By the way, I just been reading a book. I'm doing a new research project on mad at God, and when we're stuck in anger, whether it's anger with other people or with God, it's very isolating.
Yes.
You know.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
But
Very.
okay, so let's go on with what we have here. Is so what's the difference between grief versus sadness, depression, or sorrow? Because a lot of people are depressed, a lot of people are sad, but they're not comforted. So what do you think is the difference between grief versus sadness, depression, or sorrow?
I think some of them are the God-given natural progression of things. For instance, if you're mourning the loss of a person, you know, I mean, normally you talk about death, but it can be loss in many ways. Grief is a natural place to be. It's a
of course,
healthy
of
place
course.
to be.
Yeah.
If you stay there, though, I think that the darkness of that would be called more depression. I'm not talking about clinical depression or anything like that. I'm talking about you just don't, you get too deep in a dark place.
Situational,
you know.
situational depression, yeah.
But some of it is a very healthy process thing to me of what I would consider grief.
So, Karen, anything you'd like to add?
Well, maybe it's kind of like a amount of hope that you have. Like if you're sorrowful, you've kind of given up hope. And if you're depressed, you don't really see a way forward. You're kind of giving up hope. But I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but
that's fine. That's fine. Hey, I'm going to use one word that is the difference between grief versus sadness, sorrow, or depression, and here's the word resolution.
Okay. All right.
So grief always brings us to resolution. Jesus himself, getting back to our slides here for a moment, Jesus himself says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." It's a very specific type of resolution.
Yes.
And that's the resolution of comfort, you know. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the difference between grief and sadness and sorrow or depression. Here's another interesting. You know, I'm a guy who likes questions. I really do, and I, you know, actually, there's a Bible verse in the book of Proverbs that says this: it says that it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search it out.
There you go.
That's a good verse, isn't it?
Good verse.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I think a lot of people want God to hand them everything on a platter, makes life simple, That's
Yep.
what I want. I early on in my Christian life, that I didn't want God. I wanted a genie.
Yep. Yeah. Please.
and
It's true. That's how it
that's
is.
that's much of our prayer life too. We're rubbing the prayer bottle, and we
Yep.
expect the genie to pop out and grant us our wishes.
Right. Boy, is it true.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
okay. Here's another good question. That is that what's the difference between a hurt or offense versus a loss? So a hurt or offense versus a loss. What do you think?
One's temporary and one's permanent.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I would say that to a degree, I'm going to have to think that through. But I would say
If
yes.
somebody threatens me with leaving me,
Mm-hmm.
that causes great hurt to me.
Yeah.
If you leave me, there's a
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
It's
There
a
you go.
different kind of,
Okay.
there's a permanency to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else, Karen? Would you, a spitball? You want to spitball anything?
Spit it, Karen, spit it.
I would say maybe like one is a response to the other two is like
Mm,
you get hurt because of a loss.
yeah. Here's something that's interesting. Is that because I try to listen to people carefully. Now, my wife might disagree with that.
She's your wife.
I know. But I try to listen to people carefully. And one of the things when they have been hurt, they just keep circling around that drain.
Mhm.
You know, here's what they did to me. Here's what they did to me. Here's what they said to me, and on and on. And there's this crazy rumination of how we turn it over a million different ways. And by the way, the reason why both of you are here is because you have gone through profound losses in your life, and you've worked through them. So I'm going to give you the high five.
I'll take it.
Yeah, there you go. But but and that's part of the trap. So we just keep on ruminating about what they did, what they said, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Because hurt
Yeah.
can become very self-centered is why.
Yeah.
It's very self-centered, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
until, I mean, that's something that you have to be, it's perspective on it, that yours
Mm-hmm.
has to be changed in order to heal.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also think like with your mind tries to solve problems and doesn't rest until it has an answer that it's satisfied with. And a lot of hurts
Mm-hmm.
don't make sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense why that person did what they did. And so your
Yeah.
mind just is constantly like, this doesn't make sense, and that didn't make sense, and oh, they said this, that doesn't make sense, and you're still trying to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is that when people hurt you, it doesn't make sense a lot of times, and
Yeah.
um,
It's
Right.
irrational.
And well,
yeah,
and it affects you, but it might not have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it can't make sense, because you're just like, how could
Yeah.
you do this to me? Or
Yeah.
and it's, you're just in the way actually and getting hit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You
it's
stepped
true.
out into traffic,
That's
or
right.
the car came up on the sidewalk. Either way,
Right. It's how it feels too.
it
It
does.
holds everything. Yeah.
You just got run over.
Yeah.
So here's one way that's been helpful for me to delineate between hurt, offense, and loss. And And this opened up so much in my thinking on this, because I believe until you start exploring your losses, you really can't forgive. No, let me unpack that for a moment. But let's say that you're married to an alcoholic. That's the hurt. But what are some of the possible losses the spouse of an alcoholic might experience? What are some of the losses?
Oh, well, stability.
Okay, there's a good one. Yeah. What else?
Accountability.
Accountability.
Count
Loss
on
of
them.
trust.
And loss of trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
some pragmatic things like maybe finances.
Yeah.
You know, even things like having a spouse you're proud of.
Mhm.
You know.
And I think that you can feel replaced. And I'll tell you why I
Yeah.
think that.
Yeah.
At a crazy time in my life, I was a bartender.
You
And
know,
I
the more I
had
hear your story, Trina, the more I like you.
my goodness. And I had a man who I'll never forget. And he sat there as he took that bottle, that drink in his hand,
Yeah.
and he said, "This is my woman.
Mm,
She never lets me down." And he
yeah.
described that as a person. He was a married man with children. And when
Mm.
I heard him say that, I thought, I wonder how your wife feels.
Mhm.
Mm,
She
Yeah.
feels betrayed. She feels
yeah.
replaced. I
Yeah.
mean, where's her worth when that bottle's that you're everything. So that's why when I think of alcoholism,
Yeah.
or that,
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
what if,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
so sad.
It
Mhm.
is. It is.
I
I
think you
tell.
also
Go
you
ahead,
also
Karen.
lose the dream of what your relationship was gonna be,
Oh,
like
that's so
that.
important. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah.
what you thought it
Because
was.
as women, we want to be the apple of your eye. We're
Yeah.
the queen of the castle, right? And when you
Yeah.
tip our
Yeah.
throne, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Really. Yeah. I always tell, and I've worked with a lot of addicts along the way, and for instance, with an alcoholic, I always tell them, do you realize you don't have a drinking problem? You have a drinking solution.
Mm.
So once we figure out what the problem is and work on it, you won't need that solution any longer.
Yeah.
You know. Now,
Right.
sometimes it can get to the place where a person literally has a physical dependency
Yeah.
where they
Yes.
need detox, a serious
Right.
detox. You
But
Mhm.
know.
in that, I mean, if it wasn't alcoholism, it can be sexual perversions, or it could
Yeah.
be even some shopping things. I mean, I've dealt with people that, I mean, oh my word, are so deep in debt, it's absolutely
Yeah.
horrific. And then
Oh
hoarding
yeah.
begins, like, oh my word. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a terrible addiction,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that you can
Hoarding.
that you can
Yeah.
hide. People
Yeah, I
hide
can't.
behind.
I can't watch the hoarding shows myself. Now, there are
Gives you anxiety.
some in my family can watch them, but they drive me nuts. And and I have a messy office, and everybody says I'm a hoarder, but it's okay, maybe
You
so,
say, but
but
I got Jesus.
yeah, but here's one thing. Here's one thing I know about hoarding is that when you watch those shows, and you trace it back, it always goes back to trauma.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So,
But
oh,
in that, show me
mhm.
somebody that's never had trauma.
Exactly. They haven't learned how to
That's
process,
right.
and that's
It's true.
I know a lot of smart people who take, and like what Karen was talking about earlier, who take kind of this intellectual, this we're gonna kind of dismantle our hurt and look at it a million different ways. But hurt doesn't work that way. You cannot find the answer to hurt. You have to process your
Yes.
Mhm.
hurt,
Yeah.
and there's a path. There's a path for that.
Right. And
And
it
so
doesn't have to be a long path.
no, no, yeah. I agree. Yeah, and I think
People
this,
say,
as
"Oh,
long
this
as
is
you,
going to take a while." I say, "No, it won't. It won't."
as long as you're walking the path,
That's
So
right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So Trina, if you don't mind me getting personal here for a moment,
No.
is that what were some of the losses that you experienced when your husband decided that he was a woman?
Well, as soon as he said it out loud that
Mm-hmm.
I life is too hard as a man, and that was the route he was going to take. Um, you can't wrap your head around that. I mean,
Yeah.
it was something that you what? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
well, and so, I mean, my security,
Yeah.
I instantly felt abandoned and replaced. I felt like I had been duped.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how in the world did this? How
Yeah.
come I didn't see this coming?
Yeah.
Or but I don't know. I felt tricked, and one
Mm-hmm.
of the words that he used is I was an experiment gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that hit me below the belt. I don't know if there's a nice way to say that.
Yeah.
Really,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought I was worth more than a guinea pig for somebody, and I had 4 children.
Yeah.
So um, I at first I was livid,
Sure. Sure.
besides confused. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like spun out, yes, but then it went on a long time. It wasn't just a few, days, months, or years. It drug on
Yeah.
because I didn't know what I was stuck in something that I took vows that I was going to honor.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I felt,
So you lost a companion, you lost
yep, a
stability,
friend,
you
friend,
lost your identity as a
yep.
wife,
My
you know.
dignity. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I didn't want anybody to know.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to know what I was dealing with.
Yeah,
Mhm.
actually a few years back, when I did an interview of you for a different project,
Yep,
that you said that this was the first time you've ever talked about it publicly.
that's right. Yeah. Oh yes.
And that wasn't
Most
that
people
long
say
ago.
that.
Yeah.
That's right. No,
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
So,
long ago. Yeah, it was just
okay.
one of those things that
Right.
give me that face.
All right. So here's
I think
some,
that, yeah,
huh?
one
Go
of the
ahead.
things you said resonated with me is that you feel like, okay, how could I have not have seen this coming? But I
Mhm.
think a lot of times when we experience loss, when somebody's betrayed us, it makes us feel stupid. Like,
Yes.
um, I fell for your act,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
I was stupid enough to believe you or trust you,
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it starts making you question your own judgment and
Ding,
all
ding,
these
ding,
kind
ding, ding. Yeah.
of things.
I know. I know when I went through one of my deep losses that I kept going back over and over and over and over and thinking, am I completely detached from reality?
Yes.
Hmm.
Oh,
You
you
know?
second guess, third guess
Oh, yeah.
yourself.
Hmm.
Oh, I thought my sanity was
Yeah.
definitely at risk
You know,
because I thought I am such an idiot. Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
How can so many people be right and I'm wrong? Because
Right.
mine was a group betrayal, and
Yep.
I was thinking, oh, this is weird because and I would talk to other people trying to say, okay, just walk with me for a moment because am I really missing something here? And I'd unpack it over and over and over and over. But yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Okay.
you're not just dealing with a broken person, or sometimes you're not dealing just with one evil person. Sometimes you're dealing with a group of bad actors.
Hmm.
Right.
Karen knows
But yes,
Karen knows that
it's
experience, but that's another story for another day. So
but it's a bad feeling.
It
and
is. It's
and
horrible.
all those feelings, though, I'd say that's where I would say, you know what, right now you're okay not to be okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because those are legitimate no matter what. That I mean,
Hmm.
nobody likes that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
However it comes at you.
So.
Yeah. And in all of our cases, those are
Hmm.
people that we know that are Christians, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yes.
You know.
That
So.
you let your guard down. The rest of the world,
Hmm.
we don't let our guard down. We don't let them close.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
For sure. So let's jump ahead here to this next slide. It says, what's the relationship between grief and forgiveness? And I'm going to answer that question there with the slide is that grief completes the unfinished business related to a loss, and forgiveness is the final step. Now, here again, coming back to what we were talking about, we've been talking about hurt, and we ruminate about the hurt, but really what we need to do is we need to explore the loss and feel our feelings about the loss. And but then that's remember we talked about that grief can be summed up in one word, and that's resolution, or Jesus has a better word, comfort,
Right.
you know. But so once we've explored the loss and we have felt our feelings, the goal is truly to get to that place of forgiveness where we release the our resentment, our desire for revenge, and our contempt for the other person or parties, and we just say, "Hey, you owe me, but I'm choosing not to collect." You know,
Right.
so
Right. And
and
you know,
so
Karen, when you say
yeah,
that, in that, in the situation that I was in, that was, it put me in kind of a mental warp zone, let alone emotional,
mm-hmm,
because the person that was flipping my world upside down
mm,
chose to step out and become somebody else. So
yeah,
not only did who am I upset with?
oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
really,
it was as if the person I'm upset with
no longer
murdered.
exists. Yeah,
Exactly. And
mm-hmm,
so we were dealing with a death. There was the mourning of a person, um,
yeah,
a death of a person, and then who is this flippy new person
mm-hmm,
like that I don't want a relationship with? Which, and
yeah,
then if you have any empathy, compassion, or the love of Jesus in you, that makes you a horrible person.
yeah,
But I haven't talked to anybody about this. I didn't have the opportunity to mourn the death,
yeah.
let alone be kind or compassionate to this. What am I expected? What am I what's being expected of me? You know, that I felt like and so in that, I have four human beings I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
I needed to
Mm-hmm.
protect somebody's minds, hearts, and emotions because I didn't know what mine were.
Yeah.
I wa-
Gotcha.
I wanted to. There were no answers. There was nobody I could even speak to of such a thing. So that process, that, oh my goodness, um, all the things that you talked about, the grief, the
Mm-hmm.
sadness, it comes like a tornado at you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
And
relentless. Yeah.
so I'm going to say what you're doing, Carrie, is an amazing thing for somebody
Great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
because
Yeah.
life is hard. And I know that right now in the world that we live in, what I
Oh yeah.
experience
Yeah.
is so much more commonplace, or it needs to be spoken about
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because this is happening to people.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
it's a big deal. It's a
Yeah.
really, and it is something that it is, it's, I mean, it's similar to if somebody is cheated on, or you find out that your spouse has a significant other, that is what this felt like, with an extra punch,
Oh yeah.
because it's not something you want talked about.
Yeah. And I just want to say, because somebody may not be watching, or this may be their first time watching, is that I have a wonderful relationship with your former spouse, but I also want to say this: so do you.
Yes, I do.
You have entered into that relationship with a spirit of grace and forgiveness that's really uncommon, and so you're to be congratulated for that. It doesn't mean that it's uncomplicated,
That's
but
right.
yeah.
Right. No, you set boundaries.
Yeah.
I have very, very strong boundaries.
Yeah. So let's look at the path, because I want to map out at least what I think is the path forward on this. And here's what I see as the path forward: is that when we are profoundly hurt, then we're going to be angry, and too many people get stuck in that anger. They just never get out of it, and that's really tragic.
Yeah.
But really, that anger, when I work with people, my next step is that I try to make a mad person a sad person, and help them to move into their grief. And the way we do that is we start talking about their losses, and like I said, a loss is different than the hurt. So you're mad about the hurt, but you're sad about the loss.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And so then, and here again, and I do remember who said this to me the very first. Oh, they didn't say it to me. I was actually watching television, and a psychology professor from Stanford University was talking, and he said this a very profound thing, and it's the only thing I remember him saying. But he said this: is that forgiveness is the final step of grief. And I had to, I just don't, just because a psychology professor at Stanford, I didn't take his word for it. I'm just that skeptical. But then I started ruminating on that, thinking about it, and I said, yeah, that's true. We can't really get past our grieving until we forgive.
That's true. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So. Here's one more thing, and then we'll wrap this up pretty soon, is that that grief actually, and you talked about this, Trina, is that, and we all have experienced this, is that grief is coming to terms with the fact that the relationship we thought we had with another is not the relationship that we actually had with him or her. And so grief is really the emotional process of accepting reality. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of Karen's story, because I'm not going, it's one of these, it's still an unfolding story. But I can speak about mine, where there was a group of kind of people that I did life with in a church, and they were church leaders. And we shared a lot of moments together that were very consequential. And there were times when I was very transparent with them about what was going on. But now looking back on it, I can see that there were a lot of kind of like backroom conversations about Kerry and about his ministry. And those things essentially gained momentum until they finally came to the crisis point. And so it's getting back to this statement where it says that that it's coming to terms with the relationship that we thought we had with this person or persons is not the relationship that we had with them. And so grief is the emotional process of accepting reality.
And I think that people, I know that I think that most people realize, but forgiveness doesn't mean
Yeah.
that person even has to be in your life.
Yeah. Or that they have to even be sorry for what they've done.
Oh, and they probably don't even know that you've forgiven them. That's beside that, but that's beside the point
Yeah.
in that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
um, uh, because I mean, in one of my just life situations, somebody who sexually abused one of my children,
Mm.
I have had to work through these steps, the very steps that you're talking about, and forgive that, but give them to God.
Yeah.
Brought
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
through
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
because it wasn't that, oh, it's okay what you did. That's not at all how that
No.
forgiveness works.
No. No.
Yeah.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's something that somebody needs to know, that
Yeah.
we're
Mm-hmm.
not being weak as believers in Christ, that we are strong.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
forgiveness it's so deep and so big that it sets us free.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
So let me talk about moving forward here, and then we'll
Yes.
wrap this up in just a moment. So to move forward, don't just rehearse your hurts. You have to name your losses. You have to feel your feelings. You let your anger move to sadness, and let your sadness then move to forgiveness, and then finally reframe or release the relationship.
Mm.
You know,
I
and
love that. It's perfect.
yeah,
It's perfect.
and so in your case, Trina, you had to release the relationship, and now since that time you've reframed it.
Mm.
Right. Very much so.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Karen has released the relationship. That's what I had to do.
Mm.
I just had to release the relationship. And
Hmm.
the people would, and they even to this day, people still come up to me and say, "Did you hear about blah blah blah?" And I just I just tell them, I've stepped back from that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm no longer the
Because
pastor of their church, and so
and the enemy of our soul would love
mm-hmm,
nothing more than for us to stay
yeah,
in that spinny spot
yeah,
and dwell on it and dwell on
yeah,
it and let it
yeah,
ruin us.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, that forgiveness part's what cuts the line to him. Just cut
yeah.
that line right there. You're not coming back in here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's good. That's good.
Wow.
You know,
I call it
but
stick a no fishing sign in it. Don't fish there no more. You're done.
there
No.
you go. So,
Yeah.
stick a stake in that vampire's heart.
That's exactly it too. You can get as graphic
Because
and nasty as you
yeah,
want to, Jeff.
because he'll suck the life out of you.
That's his goal. That's
Yeah,
his goal. And I just
yeah,
heard a message super quick, and it was on
yeah.
rest, and that God designed Sabbath rest, and to make
Mm-hmm.
sure as human beings that we have a day of rest, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that stuck out was that, do you know that Satan never rests?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
He walks to and fro,
Mm-hmm.
face of the
Yeah,
earth, looking for who he can kill, steal, and destroy. And I
yeah.
thought, you know what? A new thing, don't be like Satan. Take your rest. you know? And I thought, but isn't that a good,
Yeah.
and so, if people realize and our enemy, it can work in our head. And that,
Oh yeah.
that's
Oh
where that
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
replay happens.
You
Let's
know,
stop.
I've seen this, and I know I understand why people become cranky and bitter old people,
Yes. Yes.
because life doesn't work the way you expect it to.
That's right.
Mm.
But the only way you're going to walk into eternity free is through forgiveness.
Right.
Mm.
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
Let it go.
Because it's the truth. Because if people would just think, how many people do you hear say, and especially, oh, do you want to know what he did to me?
Yeah.
You ever
Oh
heard what
yeah.
he did
Oh
to
yeah.
me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
well, that's a life wrecker. That
Exactly.
just wrecks your life.
Yeah.
Get out of
Yeah.
it. Let it go. Just move on. Whatever you got to
Hey,
do, forgive them, and yeah.
yeah, there you go. Hey, I appreciate you both more than you know. And so, but I do want to say it now. And I also want to say this is that forgiveness is the only good path forward. It's what sets wounded hearts free. Now, we're
Amen.
going to be talking more about these 10 steps of forgiveness. We're only on step number 3. This is all part of our forgiveness intensive. But thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. Stay on the line, and then we'll have a chance to talk afterwards. But in the meantime, I want to wrap this up for our viewers. So let me just do that right now. So, guys, hey, thank you for watching today. And I would encourage you to find the way forward through, we have a website that we're developing, and it's beyondbetrayal.org. And also, you can find us on Facebook at beyondbetrayal.org and connect with us there. And that way you won't miss a single broadcast of what we're doing. And I hope that, I hope for nothing more for you than for you to find true forgiveness, or excuse me, true freedom in your life through that path of forgiveness. So that's it for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.